Halloween night was supposed to be lively. Kids darted from house to house, laughter echoing through the crisp air. But my shift at the diner dragged on, and by the time I locked up, the streets were quiet, the festive spirit dissipating into an eerie stillness. As I stepped outside, across the street stood a small boy, his homemade costume ragged and shadowed, blending into the night. He looked no older than 8, his eyes wide and unblinking, fixed solely on me. "Hey, kid, you lost?" I called out, instinctively stepping forward. My voice sounded hollow against the stillness. He didn't answer, just stared. My pulse quickened as I crossed the street, unease curling in my gut. But instead of a reply, he leaned in closer, his breath ghosting in the cold air. "They're coming," he whispered. "Who's coming?" I asked, my voice trembling. The boy pointed behind me, his finger trembling slightly. I turned, scanning the empty street, but there was nothing, only the shadows deepening, swallowing the light. When I turned back, the boy was gone. I staggered back, confusion and fear swirling within me. What had just happened? I shook my head, desperate to dispel the unsettling sensation creeping over me. The unease clung to me like a bad taste in my mouth as I hurried home, each step heavy with dread. Finally, I sank onto the couch in my living room, the fire crackling softly, its warm glow wrapping around me like a comforting embrace. But that tranquility shattered in an instant. I jolted awake to a sharp, urgent tapping, echoing through the stillness of my home. My heart raced as I scanned the darkened room, disoriented. The relentless tapping continued, each knock reverberating in my chest like a dire warning, dragging me from the depths of slumber into a chilling reality. It was Halloween night, and an unsettling stillness enveloped the neighborhood, making every rustle and whisper feel amplified. I shuffled to the window, bleary-eyed, and peeked through the curtain. I glanced into the shadows, half expecting to see a group of teenagers playing pranks. I couldn't believe my eyes. The boy from earlier stood right outside my window. The weak glow of the streetlight cast his pale face in sharp relief, making him look unnervingly fragile. Fear twisted in my chest, tightening like a vice. The moment settled heavily on my shoulders, an instinctual warning thrumming in my veins. "They are coming for you!" he screamed, voice cracking with terror. Before I could react, the lights in my house flickered violently, then went out completely, plunging the room into total darkness. The streetlights followed, casting the entire neighborhood into a thick, suffocating blackness. I fumbled for my phone, fingers trembling as I switched on the flashlight. The beam cut through the suffocating black, but as I swept the light around, I found nothing. I dashed to the door. Grabbing my gun from the drawer, I stepped outside, the night air heavy with tension. The silence was unnerving, broken only by the soft rustle of leaves in the wind. I scanned the area, searching for any sign of the boy. But there was nothing, only small glimmers of coal, ashes scattered across the pavement, and a lingering hint of sulfur that curled in my nostrils like a sinister warning. I hurried back inside, locking the door behind me. My hands shook as I pressed my back against the cold wood, trying to calm my racing heart. But then, a chilling realization gripped me. I wasn't alone. From the corner of my eye, I caught movement in the shadows. My breath hitched as I turned slowly, flashlight beam trembling in my hand. I realized with a chilling clarity, whatever was coming had already arrived. The Halloween party pulsed with life, a whirlwind of laughter, music, and swirling costumes. I had thrown together a last-minute mask, cheap, unremarkable, just enough to blend into the crowd. But beneath the facade, an unsettling feeling stirred in my gut, gnawing at the edges of my consciousness. As I mingled with friends trying to immerse myself in the festivities, I caught sight of him. Across the room stood a man in a dark suit, his plain white mask an unsettling contrast against the vibrancy of the party. He didn't move or dance. He simply stood there, eyes hidden behind that stark mask, fixed directly on me. My stomach dropped. At first, I tried to dismiss it. Just another partygoer lost in the spirit of Halloween. But every time I glanced away, my eyes were drawn back to him, a magnetic pull that tightened my chest. No matter where I moved, he remained at the edge of my vision, a shadow looming in the periphery. The laughter around me became muffled, the music distorted, like I was underwater. Panic crept in as I felt his gaze bore into me, heavy and suffocating. The air grew thick, almost electric, and I fought to catch my breath. I forced a smile at a group of friends, but the laughter felt hollow, the joy of the night dimming under the weight of his presence. Why was he staring at me? A thrill of fear shot through me, igniting my instinct to flee. I swallowed hard and made my way through the crowd, desperate to shake the feeling of being hunted. I laughed and chatted, but it felt forced. Each time I turned, he was a little closer. "Just a costume," I muttered under my breath, trying to convince myself. But the facade shattered when I suddenly felt a cold gust of wind sweep through the room, and the lights flickered momentarily. I needed to confront him, to shatter this spell of fear. I approached him, heart hammering, the noise of the party fading into a haunting silence in my mind. "Nice costume," I said, my voice trembling. He didn't respond. His lifeless mask just stared at me. A wave of dread washed over me, and I felt rooted to the spot, unable to back away. The crowd danced around us, oblivious to the suffocating tension that crackled in the air. I confronted the figure in the mask. "What do you want?" I forced the words out, my voice barely rising above the music. Without warning, he reached toward me with a gloved hand, slow and deliberate, his fingers curling as if to grasp something unseen. The moment felt like an eternity, and I instinctively stepped back, but I was caught in his glare, paralyzed. "Come closer," he whispered, his voice low and chilling, slicing through the revelry around us. In that instant, the noise of the party faded into a distant murmur, the vibrant lights dimming. All that remained was him in that hollow mask, drawing me in with a magnetic pull. Panic swelled in my chest, but I couldn't break free from his stare. Suddenly, I tore my gaze away and scanned the crowd for help, but everyone continued dancing, laughing, completely unaware of my growing terror. It felt as if I were invisible, trapped in a nightmare, while the world moved on. When I turned back to him, he was gone, vanished into thin air. My heart raced, my mind spun with confusion. Had he been real? I tried to shake it off, blending back into the party, but the weight of his presence lingered in the back of my mind, a shadow that refused to dissipate. The room felt stifling, the laughter grating, and the music a mockery of my fear. Suddenly, the lights flickered again, plunging the room into semi-darkness. For a heartbeat, panic surged, and then I saw him, standing at the edge of the crowd, the mask gleaming ominously in the dim light. I was unable to move as a chill spread through me. Then, just as abruptly, the lights surged back to life. I blinked, and he was gone, swallowed by the crowd as if he had never been there at all. Laughter erupted around me, and I felt a rush of nausea. "Are you okay?" a friend asked, oblivious to the terror that gripped me. "Yeah, just a little dizzy," I managed to say, forcing a smile that felt foreign on my lips. But deep down, I could still feel his presence lingering, a specter woven into the fabric of the night. Halloween night buzzes with energy in my neighborhood, kids darting from house to house, their laughter spilling into the cool night air as they collect candy. It was late, nearly midnight. I had just finished handing out the last of the candy, the porch light flickering as I prepared to turn it off. Just as I reached for the switch, a sudden knock echoed through the quiet of the night. Startled, I figured it was just a couple of older kids playing a prank. I swung open the door, ready to give them a piece of my mind. But no one was there. The porch stood empty, the street bathed in an eerie silence. A chill crept down my spine as I stepped outside, scanning the deserted street. All the houses were dark, their porch lights extinguished. It felt as if the entire neighborhood had slipped into a deep sleep. Then I heard it. A whisper, soft, like a breath carried on the wind. It was faint, but unmistakable. I froze, the air suddenly heavy with an unshakable dread. My heart pounded in my chest as I strained to listen, adrenaline flooding my veins. The whisper came again, clearer this time, weaving through the stillness like a sinister thread. The hairs on the back of my neck stood on end as I glanced around, but the street remained empty. Then I saw him. At the edge of my yard, half hidden in the shadows, stood a figure. Tall, impossibly tall, his body unnaturally rigid. The dim light from the street barely touched him, leaving his features shrouded in darkness, obscuring any details. My breath hitched in my throat, panic surging through me. Without thinking, I slammed the door shut and locked it tight. my pulse racing. I pressed my back against the door, trying to steady my breathing. But the whispers were now inside too, soft, insistent, seeping through the walls like a dark presence. Panic clawed at my chest as I rushed upstairs, locking myself in my bedroom, desperate for safety. Thoughts spiraled in my mind. And then I heard it. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate. Coming up the stairs. I held my breath, every muscle in my body tense. The sound grew closer, each step measured, patient, like a predator stalking its prey. Then they stopped, right outside my bedroom door. The silence that followed was deafening, an oppressive weight that filled the room. I could feel my heartbeat echoing in my ears, the whispers morphing into a cacophony of sound, blending with the creeping dread that wrapped around me like a vice. The whisper came again, now muffled, as if it were pressing against the door, begging for entrance. I knew I had to act. My mind raced as I scanned the dimly lit room for something, anything I could use. But the only thing within reach was my phone. I grabbed it, fingers shaking, and aimed the flashlight at the door, hoping to reveal whatever horror lay on the other side. Just then, a shadow slid across the floor, stretching like a dark hand reaching for me. I stepped back. Suddenly, the whisper transformed into a growl, a low, guttural sound that sent a jolt of terror through me. The handle rattled, a slow, deliberate twist that sent ice coursing through my veins. I pressed my back against the wall, holding my breath, praying that whatever was outside would just go away. The handle stopped turning, but the silence was worse than the sound. My mind raced with thoughts of what could happen next. Then I heard it. A soft thud, followed by a slow scrape, like fingers trailing down the wood. I couldn't take it any longer. Panic surged through me, propelling me toward the window, desperate for escape. But as I reached it, I was struck still. The door creaked open behind me, revealing a void of darkness that seemed to breathe. But there was nothing there, only darkness.